Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the show today. Looking forward to getting into today's comic book news, and glad to have you guys here with us. Please do us a favor and go over and hit that like and share button so everybody knows what's going on. They come and join us, and we love interacting with the chat or being berated by them. Either way. Nevertheless, of course, I am joined by Thundero. How are you doing today, sir?
Wonderful. How are you?
I am good. It's a pretty sunny day, which is a good thing. And but I This is going to be a little bit shorter of a show than I normally would do because I do have a maintenance man coming to service the air conditionings. That's all right.
Interesting.
It is.
Interesting.
I mean, well, you got to do these things every now and then, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, I was in that business for a long time. Trust me, you'd be surprised how many people don't. They simply just do not. They wait and wait and wait until everything's broken, and then they call somebody out to come look at everything. And it's like, why did you do that?
Oh
You could have
no.
just did one thing, or you could have did basic maintenance, and this wouldn't have happened.
Oh no, I have them out every couple of years, every 2 years, I guess, is on the calendar or something like that. I think it's 2 years. Uh, it's just to maintain your stuff. I have a calendar, and on that calendar, I keep everything scheduled. I don't know, a good 10 years in the future for some things like painting of exteriors and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I mean, it's not hard to do, especially with these digital calendars. You can do it quite easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Technology can be a wonder, but it can also be an absolute pain.
Yeah. But it depends on what your life is, right? I mean, if your life's simple and you're spending more of your time on yourself or hobbies and things like that, then and you live in an apartment or a condo or you rent a house or something like that, you don't have to worry about those things as much. You know,
Yeah.
it's not a priority. But if you're gonna bother to own things, then you bring on more responsibility, and that's part of the deal, right? In life you have kind of a choice. You either work for yourself or you work for someone else. Working for
Yeah.
someone else is way easier. It's so much easier. Working for yourself, you're not necessarily going to make a lot of money. It might take you time before you start making money, good amount of time. And there's so many responsibilities, so many things you need to do. But of course, you have the freedom. The only person that's in charge or of your success is you. But it's a choice, right? And it's not necessarily an easy one. If you're a type of person who has, your hobbies and things are more important, then don't do that. Don't do that, right?
Right.
Go work for someone and make your paycheck because that's simple. They take care of all everything and all. You can spend your free time doing what you want. So it's not really. I know a lot of people have this image that you got to be a private business owner and stuff like that. Nah, it's a choice, man. You got to think about it, right?
Right.
Depends on what you want out of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. It not everybody has a personality of an entrepreneurial spirit, and not even so much that, just a ability to be, in a sense, independent. Meaning they're in control of their own destiny in that way. It's just it's a level of persistence and discipline that some people are just not comfortable with,
hmm
and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just who
No,
you
you don't.
are as a person.
Yeah, you don't have to have it. Do it as
Yeah.
you want with your life. That's sure. I mean, you got to keep in mind, I'm a very busy guy, and I work Monday through Friday. I get up at 6. I get home at 10 in the
Wow.
night, right? And of
Yeah.
course, I have lunch in between. I have these little YouTube things, which is technically my free time, right? And
Hmm.
then on Saturday, I work from 8 to 6. So I have a day off, and that would be Sunday, and my wife owns that. So trust
It's
that
all
I am
hers.
busy on that day too. But I'm just saying, and I'm fine with it. I'm very used to it, but maybe that's not your thing.
Right.
It depends. Some people like go fishing, some people like work on cars, or whatever it is you like to do. You have to kind of balance that because my free time doing what I do. is scheduled. I schedule everything. I even schedule time with my wife.
Oh
I mean,
my.
my life is scheduled. So, and if you're not into that, then don't get into your private business, man. Don't do that.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to run a business without knowing what you're going to be doing the next day for sure. Especially like
Yeah, no, you
it's
can't.
just impossible to make plans.
Well, because you have so many more responsibilities, right?
Yeah.
You have these workers that are with you, and even with someone like me, I have a fairly small. Well, I used to have a bigger one, but I sold that. But I have right now. Let me see, one, two, three, four. Yeah, I have four employees right now, which is much less than I used to have. I had one point, I had 150 employees,
Whew.
right? So I only got four now, which is much more manageable. But still, I'm responsible for their well-being. I'm responsible for them having enough money to live their life. I have a responsibility for their families. I have I'm responsible for them, right?
Right.
In every way. Well, I'm just saying, it is what it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, I agree with you. I think I've ran businesses. My family has owned multiple businesses throughout the years. I did for a little while, and it's a different mindset
It is.
that people don't appreciate.
It is.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's not that you have to necessarily be a crazy, work all the time person. Depending on what the business is, that might not be necessary. But it's a different way of looking at the world. You have to look at the world through a very specific lens that other people just don't. And if you don't want to look at the world that way, like I did it for years, it's one of the reasons I didn't take over my family's business.
Hmm.
Um, and you just want to, enjoy things more or whatever you want to call it. There's nothing wrong with that.
Nope.
Some people have this idea that there's, you know, only people who are full hustle all the time, those are the good people or whatever, and it's
No,
just not true. There's
it's not
plenty of
about that.
entrepreneurs who are just terrible people, genuinely.
Sure.
Like they make a lot of money, but they're scumbags. You wouldn't want them. You wouldn't want to really associate with them if they weren't making money.
Well, you're
Stuff
talking
like
about
that.
bankers and stuff like
Well,
that.
even just businessmen. There's a lot of businessmen who will rob their own mother if they get the chance.
Yeah, I
Uh,
suppose so. Yeah, it kind of you're talking about that's big time business though. What I do is much smaller.
yeah.
But even though, I mean, but I'm sure they put in similar hours to what I do. But mine spread over several things. It's not one thing. But I mean, that's not the
Mhm.
point I'm even trying to make. That's not the point. My point is that as far as your question goes, um, you have to know that that's what your because your life's going to be like. A lot of people want to open a restaurant, right? That's a very common thing people want to do. They have a few good recipes or they have an idea and they want to open a restaurant, and that's great.
Mhm.
We need more good restaurants, please. But I don't know that people understand that when you take on a new business, particularly something like a restaurant, that is your life now.
Yeah.
That's the end of the conversation. That's your life now. That's what you do,
Right.
right? And I mention restaurants because it's probably the most work intensive and intensive of any kind of business you could own. It literally takes over, and it just comes down to the mentality. So, if that's something you're interested in, go for it. But you have to understand it isn't really about money. The guys
Mhm.
you're talking about, it's about money. It doesn't matter what
Yeah.
their business is, it's about the money. And that's a very different mindset. This has, the things I do has nothing about money. It has nothing to do with money. I mean, in the end, it pays my bills, but that's not why you're doing it. You're doing it because you're
Mhm.
trying to create something or you have a vision or it depends on the individual and the business, of course. But yeah, you know, I see
Well,
John
one of the
Dealers in here.
things I do see that. One of the
Yeah.
things a lot of people don't understand of like successful quote unquote people is the way they view money. Most of them don't view money like normal people view money because we
Yeah,
get some money.
I don't
We
care about
usually
money at
like want
all.
to hold on. We want to kind of keep it. We want to keep it safe. A lot of wealthy people, I would say probably most of them, don't even think about money that way. It's not to them. It's nothing more than it's not really even an asset. It's just a mechanism for them to do the things they want to do.
Mhm.
Um, and if it happens to grow exponentially, cool. If it doesn't, then they don't really care because to them it's just a constant flow. It's just numbers at a certain point. Once you get to a certain level, it's all just numbers at the end of the
Right.
day.
Well,
And a lot of them end up there. And when they get there, the biggest thing for them is finding ways to find meaning in other stuff because the
right.
numbers are already in their favor. They don't really have to worry about money anymore. Now, what do you worry about? Like,
Well,
what is your life now?
I unfortunately hang around with a lot of those kind of people. It's just the world I live in,
Hmm.
and mostly it's status. That's what
Yeah,
it comes down to for them. But the people over here that I consider my actual friends are not like that. They're much more like me. They simply do what they do. One guy is carrying on a legacy, a family legacy. The other guy is a doctor. He's an optician. But I have a group of friends who are very, well off individuals.
yeah,
But they're not that kind of people. They're just normal people. But I do have to interact with a lot of those kinds, and it really comes down to status. That's what it really is for them. But anyway, this has nothing to do with comic books whatsoever.
nothing, not even a
Nothing.
little bit.
I do see Rogers in here. I see ladies in here. Hello, everybody. I also see Middle Earth Story Time. And I see John Dillard. Hi, John. I'll give another shout out again to his The Buckler. If you haven't picked that up, go get one because it's freaking phenomenal, dude. The art is just out of this world. I mean, of course, John Dillard is a great artist. We all know that. But it's really, really good, John. I'm impressed. I've always been impressed by his art, but his sequentials are really good too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know,
because that's one of the things we see a lot of really good artists, like say Rabbit, for instance.
right.
Rabbit is a photorealistic portrait guy. He's amazing. It's just shocking how good he is. But can he do sequentials? I don't know. I don't even know if he knows, right?
I
Uh,
don't know if he's ever tried.
I don't know. Yeah, but doing sequentials is very different because you're storytelling, right?
Right.
And but John's sequentials are great. The art is phenomenal. It's just really good, and I like too that because John doesn't shy away from adult content. And
Hmm.
I appreciate that. I know we've had that conversation here several times. Art T. Bear had the conversation, others about whether you should go adult or not, right? And it seems to be simply a personal choice. I don't think it really matters much, but the artists do have that conversation. However, John is not afraid of such things. However, in the book, it is an adult book, and it does have some adult panels per se, but they're tastefully
Mm.
done, John, and that's really good, man. I appreciate that because he could have went really vulgar with it if he wanted to, and he could have made it work too, I'm sure, but he didn't. It's very tasteful, and it works well. It's a good adult graphic novel. It's solid. The storytelling's good. The sequentials are good. The art is phenomenal. It's a really good book, and I hope you do more and more of it, John. Of course, one of the main things we do over here on this channel, other than just talking shit about whatever we're talking about, is support indie comic books. That's our big thing. I hope John finds nothing but success. I hope he sells millions of the damn things, because he deserves it. He's put the work in, and he's got the talent and the skill. And it kind of brings us to an overall point that I'm going to discuss a little bit later. But we got to the point here with the big comic book companies that they just don't want us anymore, Thunder.
That's right.
I mean, it's kind of clear. I know a lot of us have held out hope, and we don't want that to be true, but it is true. They just don't want us anymore. Therefore, if you still want to enjoy comic books, and it's certainly a hobby, certainly one of my hobbies I've had since I was little, but you're going to have to look elsewhere, and the indie scene is certainly a place to do that. And luckily, it is a gigantic scene, so there's a lot to look into and to find. But because it's a strange choice. We'll see what happens when Zaslav finally gets his hands into DC Comics themselves. Although, do keep in mind that Warner Brothers Discovery, is that what they're calling it? Um,
Hmm.
they made a change. DCComics.com is no longer DCComics.com. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't
Yeah,
actually.
it's just DC now
Interesting.
only. It's an interesting change, but Zazoff is eventually going to get his hands into those comic books eventually.
Yeah.
And what will he do there, right? Because they're just getting, DC is like in some desperation to catch up to the wokeness of Marvel, right? Is what they seem to be. And I know the chat has been telling me for, well, years, Chester, just give up. All right,
Yes.
fine, fine.
And I'm part of that chat. Yes. There's no salvaging them. Especially, it was genuinely one of the saddest days in my like entertainment life when Disney bought Star Wars and when they bought Marvel, because I knew that that was it.
Yeah,
There'd be some bright flashes here or there of brilliance, but by and large, Disney's agenda is not to make quality products. Has not been, probably since Walt died, but at least since the 90s. Disney has an agenda. It's political. It has been pretty much my entire life, probably my entire life.
hmm,
And they're only interested in pushing that. They don't care if they lose money because they know they have a bunch of cultists who will follow them into hell. These people are insane how much they love this company, which is all it is, but they exist and they're real. There are people, Chester, who go to Walt Disney World on a monthly basis.
yeah, sure,
That
yeah,
is not cheap. That is a lot of money to do that. And they do it.
yeah,
These people are beyond saving, to be honest. As Morpheus put it in the Matrix, they're so in love with the system, they're so indebted to it that they will literally fight for it. And the system in this case is the mouse. They love the
yeah,
mouse, and
yeah,
they'll do anything for the mouse. And once Disney acquired Marvel and Star Wars, I knew what those brands were going to become, and they became exactly what I thought. Nothing but
right.
mouthpieces
Well,
for stupid politics.
Well, it has become that for sure. But initially, what was that guy who was working with Bob Iger? Bob Iger gets all the credit, but this guy did quite a lot too. And he's the one that was keeping Kevin Feige in check. I can't remember his name now for some reason.
I can't
But
either, but I know who you're talking
yeah,
about.
the guy that was giving Feige a hard time. Of course, they got rid of him. They fired him and gave Feige 100% control, and we see what that did. But you know where he is now? Standing next to Zaslav. He hired him.
Good,
Yeah,
good.
that's
I'm telling you,
interesting.
man, Axlov is coming, and he's taking heads. And aside from Ezra Miller, for some reason, it seems like no one is safe.
Well, now we I saw the quotes on that, and they definitely what he said was he's seen these movies, and that was including the Flash, and they're really terrific. And it sounds like the Flash movie is pretty good from all the test screening stuff and the information we have. But that doesn't mean that he's not going to go back and reshoot it with another actor. He didn't say
Yeah.
that. He just simply said it's terrific, and we understood that that's not the problem. The movie itself's not the problem. You do realize that Ezra Miller now has additional charges put against him for burglary.
Yes.
Yeah, this boy
So
is,
he needs to be in a cell with constant psychiatric evaluation.
well, just for his own sake, because he's
Yeah.
imploding.
Yeah.
Because he's a young man, he has a future ahead of him.
Not if he keeps on,
Yeah, well, that's the
because
problem.
eventually he's doing this stuff in America. Eventually he's gonna fuck around and find out. He breaks into the wrong house, he's gonna get got. Simple as that.
It's true.
And I will have no sympathy. I will shed zero tears. I will not even request that he rests in peace because you have got everything he deserved.
Yeah, but I'm more sympathetic. Well, I wouldn't use the word sympathetic. I'm more compassionate than you are.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. No argument. Yeah, but then again, I do reserve and understand the difference between compassion and sympathy. Right.
Yeah.
The same as tolerance and acceptance. They are different.
Hmm.
Right.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, the youngins or modern people don't seem to understand that these words are different, though.
Well, they don't care. It's not that they don't care.
Yeah,
They want you to tolerate everything because they're scumbags. A lot of them,
yeah,
and they have no consideration for the beliefs or concerns of others. They think only their view is correct, and anybody who deviates from it is some kind of bigot. or some other form of misanthropic figure who must be eradicated from society so they can have their utopia. The problem is utopia is impossible. And when you have a utopian worldview and you consistently believe that if you just do this, things will be right, that goalpost keeps moving.
It does,
And as
and
we've
that's a
seen,
problem. Yeah.
yeah, as we've seen in all communist countries since the dawn of communism, and really before even, they eventually just run out of people to blame
They do.
because that's
Well,
what they do. They just blame others.
well, it kind of also brings up Neil Gaiman's The Sandman to me a little bit. Have you had a chance to check that out yet?
I have not.
Yeah. But you know, because he's sticking to his story pretty well, I think, and it looks great. They spent money on it. The acting's very solid, but he felt that he needed to go in and race swap nearly everything, right? And gotta have one of every color, right? And
Hmm.
you know, of course, and we mentioned a little bit about Gaiman and his homoeroticness anyway. And he does that naturally. And if you're not a reader of Neil Gaiman, you wouldn't know that, I suppose. But you know, he it doesn't matter because it's well done. It's just like I made the comparison to Anne Rice. She writes pretty much only homoerotic stuff, but they're really well written and they were huge hits. You never know what's going to be popular. But I just a little befuddled. It's his creation; he can do whatever he wants with it. Kind of end of conversation, right? But
Hmm.
I'm just like, why, Neil? Right? The biggest one for me is the race swap on death so far.
Hmm.
Most of my concern is that the mainstream public is not going to bite on this, which I think is a shame because it is really good story. But because I like the kind of punky you know, death that he had in his story. It was kind of a punk girl, right? I liked her. She was cute and she was troublesome, as you would expect from an endless. But this one is very serious and a very not even mulatto, a very black girl. But it's just not even the same character. Not just the race swap, just the attitude. Now, of course, I've only read it in the comic book, so I haven't seen it live, and it is his character, right? But I don't know, man.
Interesting.
Yeah,
See, I'm of two minds about it. I agree with you that a creator should be allowed to change their work if
sure.
they want, but I also kind of agree with the argument that some works become much bigger than the creator.
Mm,
And while they, yes, legally they can change it, they shouldn't because it's for various different reasons. It's become larger than their own vision, than their own
sure.
egos.
Yeah, and
Um,
but this Sandman's not that. It's not
no,
that
that's true.
level.
I
It is
agree.
really
I
well
agree.
a good graphic novel, but it's not that. It's not like say Superman or Lord of the Rings or something like that.
Or
And
Star Wars.
or Star Wars, yeah. But we're seeing with Lord of the Rings, the pushback is immense, right?
Yeah,
And their
as it should
marketing
be.
is foolish. And you know, it's just a sacred cow. You don't mess with Tolkien stuff, man. It's just one of those things, you know.
Oh, there was people furious about the Jackson trilogy. I remember when that came out. There were a lot of Tolkien fans not happy,
Sure.
including his son, Christopher Tolkien, didn't like them. He actually very much didn't like them. He was very vocal about it.
Which I don't
Um,
understand because I've read his dad's book, and of course I understand he's the one who put the Silmarillion out, and there is
yeah.
some of him in there, and you know I get he knows better than I do, for sure. But I have
Hmm.
read the Lord of the Rings several times in my life. I've read The Hobbit, I've read the Silmarillions, I've read all the extensive external appendices and stories and stuff like that, and I thought Jackson did a phenomenal job within
I
12
do too.
hours to tell that story. I think he did a really good job.
I do too. The problems I think he had were more like the fact that it seemed to focus more on the action than it did the characters, and
Well,
it did.
it's a Hollywood
But
movie.
it's a movie, right? It's not a book. It's a lot harder to tell something compelling when it's just a character piece, especially in a fantastical setting, because it's a lot harder to relate to a character. But it's much easier to focus your energy into the high energy shots, into the high energy places, like the
Sure.
battles and the lead up to battles. It's just easier narratively in a movie to create that tension, that drama, that hook that keeps people invested. I mean, these are long films.
Well, yeah, and then
Um,
you also keep in mind you can have 10, 15 pages of a book, and you in a movie it takes up a second. It's just simply looking at what the person's wearing, right? I
yeah,
mean, this is another problem with
right.
adaption. It is not an easy thing to do, and like I said, whatever his complaints are, fair enough. He is connected to his dad directly, but I just didn't understand the argument. I thought it was a really good attempt for a movie. Jeff says that odds are that Neil isn't doing the race gender swap; it's being dictated from above. I don't know that that's true. We know Neil Gaiman is ultra woke, not extremely woke, ultra woke. We know he is. And he came out and explained why he picked that girl, particularly to play Death, and his choices. And like I said, it's his creation. He can do whatever he wants. It's a bit jarring, if you know the story and you're seeing all these changes just for the sake of identity politics. It's off-putting.
Yeah.
Um, but it is what it is. And it's okay. Um, let's see. Elrod says Death was the original Harley Quinn. I wonder if Gaiman is just trying to separate her from the Hot Topic T-shirt she became. Maybe. Like you're very true. She was very Harley Quinn became. It wasn't she. The original Harley Quinn was not like that, of course, but it was later that they made her into something like that. She is similar to the Death of the Endless for sure. Yeah.
Mm.
But anyway, it doesn't matter. It is a pretty solid show. Like I said, overall, there's not much to complain about. I just the message is present. Be aware.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Well, it's
anyway,
no surprise from Gaiman.
no, it's
Unfortunately,
not.
like I
It's
said
not.
yesterday, he holds himself back with his political bias. If he would just let that go and write, I think you could make an actual masterpiece, a genuine one that'll stay in the next 1,000 years of time. He's that good.
No,
He's
he
that
is really
creative, and
good.
his prose
Neil
is
is an
amazing.
excellent writer. And then that's kind of like all those British invasion guys, really.
Yep.
They all kind of in that same stand. But anyway, nevertheless, let's go ahead and get into it today. First thing I want to do is continue with the Valiant conversation we've been having here, and we still have a lot more to get to. But let's try to move it forward a little bit today. Yeah. So
Ye-
let me go over here and bring this up. You keep an eye on the chat, please. And of
Mhm.
course, we have been covering Valiant and their various creations with Jim Shooter and his failed attempt to buy Marvel comic books, and then him getting financiers basically through Voyager Communications, which of course Valiant comic books was under. And et cetera, et cetera. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the mid 90s and what brought us into the situation that led us into the ultimately where we are now. So let me go ahead and get over here. Boy, this is a big presentation, dude. But let's get into the next big thing that happened. Now, eventually along the line here, Jim Shooter got fired. And the thing with Jim Shooter is he's very efficient at certain things, but people don't like him. And I think it's yeah, he just has a personality that rubs people the wrong way. So eventually he was out at Valiant within a few years. I forget the exact timing. But however, it is important to note that his philosophy did continue through Valiant, even though he wasn't there. And in a way, it almost led to the ultimate demise of Valiant, which we're going to get into a little bit today. Because what happened was, people don't really understand that, ooh, Marvel in the 60s was a powerhouse. Not really. The company that owned it was losing money. Cadence Industries, right? They were losing money, and that's why that big sale come up in 86, 88, wherever it was that Shooter tried to buy Marvel. And there's been several people since then. Of course, now we know that Marvel's owned by Disney, but it's never been a big moneymaker, you know. And
Mm.
around in the 90s, when the Image guys ran out and did their own thing, comic books started taking off, and some actual big money started being made, right?
Yeah.
And this is where a very important moment of Valiant history begins. Acclaim, the video game company, came in and bought Voyager Communications. Not Valiant, Voyager Communications. They bought the whole damn kit and caboodle. And the main reason they did that was because they wanted to take some of the titles that were doing really, really well with Valiant comic books and put them into video games. And you know what? They did. Uh, of course, we have the Shadow Man game, which is people still talk about. Of course, we had several Turok games. I mean, Jesus, how many of those were there, dude?
There was a few.
Six,
Yeah,
eight,
I think
something
it's
like
about
that.
right.
Just so many Turok games, and they're very popular. People still talking about them today. Matter of fact, you can go on YouTube and you can find like multiple hour documentaries on Turok and stuff. So it wasn't necessarily a bad idea, but what happened is a year or so after Acclaim bought it, the comic book industry imploded. Right.
Yeah.
And it really comes over to down to Overstreet and those various other companies that were like started in the 70s, and basically what they were doing is trying to put a price tag on a comic book, right? And
Mm.
this created that huge investor market that came out. The whole thing with Image was very exciting, and people were buying a lot of these comic books for investment's sake. And of course, they were pushing these up to millions. Valiant went before they got bought by Acclaim. They were selling a few thousand issues here or there. Then they went over 300,000 issue numbers per issue. And then after the big thing where the pop off was going, they were selling millions per issue, right? Millions of
Wow.
copies, and it was just a feeding frenzy. But then the bottom fell out, and it fell out dramatically. And of course, Acclaim found themselves in very bad position. Many people did. The whole industry was on its knees, and but a very interesting thing happened because I had mentioned that with Jim Shooter, his philosophy is a unified universe, meaning that everything is crossed over all the time, right? He likes that. He's kind of the guy that created the inception of crossovers. And like I said, even though he was not with the company at the time, they continued his philosophy. And this, I would say, was the death knell of that incarnation of Valiant, was Unity 2000. Now, of course, Unity 2000 is looking at the year 2000, and after the bottom dropped out in the late 90s, we are seeing all kind of weird stuff being done with characters, changing their origin stories. It was a debacle. It was an absolute debacle, dude. It was nonsense, and of course, this kind of panic was happening all across the comic book industry. Companies were getting bought up or just dying in general. But this right here, Unity 2000, was an idea to do a crossover with, wait for it, Image Comics.
Uh-oh.
The problem is, and here's what really killed them. Um, Valiant, and I understand that they're still operate this way. So Jim Shooter's philosophy still seems to be embedded in that, even though it's now owned by an Indian guy. And we'll get into him next week because his story is very interesting. But uh, the Valiant guys are very efficient. Jim Shooter is an absolute taskmaster, right? So, the comic books art is in on time. On time. You are not allowed to be late, right? The
Mhm.
writing, the lettering, everything is on time. It's very efficient. It's run as a business. The problem with Image is those are a bunch of yahoos getting drunk on the weekends, making comic books. And of course, if you remember, all of you back in the day when Image was a thing, it was quite popular, but we sometimes had to wait a month or two to get an issue, didn't we? Do you remember? I do, right?
Oh yeah.
And it's because they were a bunch of yahoos. They're not businessmen. Jim Lee and all those guys, they're artists, and they're really good artists, except for one. I won't mention his name. Anyway, but of course, doing this crossover wasn't a bad idea. Valiant and Image came up about the same time. They were both part of that big bang that happened. It made sense. But the problem is that the Image guys didn't get their shit done on time. So the books were put out, and they didn't have you had books that were coming out from Valiant, where the Image books needed to come out first, or they had stuff that their art and stuff they were supposed to get from Image to be in Valiant books that were supposed to come out. It was all a mess. It was an absolute mess. I don't even know if they finished the whole thing and all the connecting, veins and material, because it was such a disaster. And it really, really put them on their back foot. And of course, I think 2004, I do believe, is when Dinesh bought Valiant, right? I think it was 2004. So we're just a few years away from Acclaim completely folding, right? And keep in mind that Acclaim, when they bought, years earlier, when they bought Voyager Communications, they spent $65 million to buy
Jeez.
that, dude. 65 million. And of course, by 2004, Acclaim was gone, just evaporated. And Dinesh, like I said, I'm going to talk about him next week. But he ended up buying on auction. He bought Acclaim, not Valiant particularly. He bought Acclaim itself on auction, like federal auction. That's how bad it got. That's how bad it got. And this right here was the final nail. This absolutely killed them. The Unity 2000 stuff. And therefore, I'm going to continue the story into where we are now next week with talking about Dinesh particularly because he righted the ship and they've got them where they are now. I know a lot of people saying, well, they've gotten quite woke, and fair enough, they have. But to be fair, Valiant's always kind of been a little woke in that way. They've never been so restrictive as Stan Lee was, right?
Mm,
But I understand the argument. However, Valiant was reborn under Dinesh, and without question, and it wouldn't be here today without him. We wouldn't have the movies, wouldn't have the video games, especially the upcoming ones. We wouldn't have the role playing games. We wouldn't have any of the stuff we have today if it wasn't for him. So he's the last bit of the history of Valiant that we need to get to, and maybe the most important part of its history. However, I don't want to just leave it just there because we need to build up talking about the characters. Now we've already talked about several of the characters, the original stuff that they leased, basically, got the
mm,
rights to do. We talked about Exo Man of War. We talked about Shadow Man. And I really want to get into Unity because it's a great storyline, and it's a Unity has its origin story. But and I know I've been mentioning it, but I probably haven't laid it out very clearly yet. And I'm going to get to it. But just to let you know, Unity is basically Valiant's Avengers. Okay, and in some ways, I would say they're better than the Avengers.
really?
And I know that's sacrilege, but in many ways, they really are. And I'll get into that, but I can't get into that until I explain more of the characters. Kind of like what Marvel did with their movies. You gotta get the characters out before you bring Thanos, right?
Sure.
So let's do that. So I want to add another character to the list here as we build up to talking about Unity specifically, because it is a very important part of the Valiant universe. And of course today we're going to talk about I don't know, I would say the linchpin of the Valiant universe, and his name is Toyo Harada. Now Toyo is one of those characters, Sundero, that is unsung
Mm,
because he is one of the best villains in comic book history. And I'm not being hyperbolic. He just is. His motivations are clear, and his way of going about it. He's just so well done, and he's very important to the Valiant universe, especially in the early storylines to get us where we are today. But Toyo Harada, or I think most people say Harada, he is. He's a little bit of Magneto, I would say. He's a little bit of Adolf Hitler, and a little bit of Jimmy Carter. Yeah, yeah. But anyway, Toyo-san was born out of nuclear fire. Now, in in the Valiant universe, they do things a little bit different, right? If you
Mm,
go to DC or Image, where they have an actual, detailed and fleshed out multiverse, a lot of companies like say Image, right? It's not a detailed multiverse. It's just a bunch of individual comic books you can buy and read, and that's fine. But if you want to have a cohesive universe in your comic book company, well, it takes some work to do that, right?
sure.
But in Marvel and DC, you have gods. You have actual gods, right? That are
Yeah.
running around doing stuff. Valiant took a much more pared down version or look at it. They're much more street level type of characters overall. Now I know you could say that DC to Marvel is that same step. Well, I'd say this: we have this an equidistant step in many ways from Marvel to Valiant, right? Except for Toyo, right? Toyo is what in their universe they call a psyot. Now in Marvel they would call it a mutant, basically. But in this
Mm,
universe, they wanted to not do the same thing Marvel or DC had done. Metahumans or DC mutants for Marvel, they have the psyot, and they base all of their powers based on psychic things and psychic projections and psychic influences and stuff like that. Therefore, the Psyot. Well, when the bomb dropped in during World War II, he was in I don't remember if it was Hiroshima or Nagasaki, but he was in one of the cities, and his psychic ability kicked on and saved his life. Of course, it didn't save Mom, as you can see right there. And this will shape the mind of a young person, I would think,
no,
a little bit,
not at all.
a little bit.
Yeah,
And he made a decision that he was going to bring peace to the world, whether we liked it or not.
I like that. Good
Yeah.
motivation.
And of course, he went on to be just a ridiculous level of, I would say he's Jean Grey on steroids, right?
Mm,
Which, Jean Grey with a Phoenix Force type of level, right? Which in this universe is way high end comparatively, right?
right.
We know that there are characters in the Marvel who could just, literally blink Jean Grey out of existence, right?
Yeah.
But as far as Valiant is concerned, he's kind of the top of the heap, right? Um, but when he was a young guy, and this happened to him, he was a kid, he was called, and here's the panel right here, by this strange monk who's always bleeding. He's constantly bleeding all the time. He's called a bleeding monk. Of course he is. But as you see, there's a young Toyo there, and he says, "Find me." And of course, he went and did. And this guy was an influence on Toyo his entire life, for good or bad, right? And Toyo went on, and he started doing things and understanding there were other people like him out there in the universe that he needed to find and bring to his side or force to his side to do what needed to be done. Along the way, he found that there were other people doing the same thing, of course, right? And you had a group called the Sect, which they don't get into really hard until later, and I won't go over it very much. But one face, or face of the Sect was shown, of course, as Project Rising Star, or Rising Spirit, sorry. And Project Rising Spirit is a connected or a part of the American government. And as you would expect, they're out there looking for psyops themselves to capture, to bring to them side, or destroy or murder, or what have you, depending what's needed. They're quite ferocious. And Harada-san ran into them quite a bit, and he realized he needed to create something to be an opposing force to it. And of course, that's when he created his foundation, the Harbinger Foundation, right? And through this, he was able to bring in psyops and try to find latent psyops and stuff. And he became very villainous, Thundero.
Yep.
His goals are right, but his intentions are right, but it's the unfortunately you find that in life sometimes you have to make people do what you think is the right thing,
Hmm.
and that's villainous, and that's kind of where he went over his decades. And of course, going back here to Project Rising Spirit, which I always thought was a cool name, the PRS. A lot of interactions with them, of course, and their greatest creation is Bloodshot himself. They're the ones that
Hmm.
created the nanobot technology that flows in his veins.
Interesting.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about Bloodshot and others later. But of course, most of the story of Toyo Harada is in the pages of Harbinger. Now, Harbinger is basically your X Men. Okay, it's just simply put, it's not quite the X-Men. It's a little different, but it's in essence it is. And this guy you see over here on the right, it became one of Toyo's biggest nemesis, and his name is Peter Stanchek. Now Peter is another very powerful scion, and he found that while working with the Harbinger Foundation, that Toyo was a villain, a bad guy, and he went to escape and get away from it. And of course, he took some of the kids who were being, checked to see if they were psiots as well with him. And of course, that's what happens in the pages of Harbinger and his renegades. You got all these different characters. They have different powers and different abilities coming from their psychic things. And Peter leads them. And I'm not going to say what the ultimate things that happen, but most of Toyo's story is happening inside the Harbinger books, which I said, which are very X-Men like. Um, Now, Harbinger was probably my favorite Valiant book I read. I really enjoyed this one. But then again, I'm also a Claremont fan who loves X Men, right? And it's not quite X Men. It's almost like a reverse of X Men, right? But it does have that feel. Nevertheless, Toyo, as I tell the story and we get into Unity later, which I'm not going to do today, you will see that Toyo is an incredibly important character in the Valiant universe itself, where Peter is important to the Harbinger book, right? But Toyo is important to the universe itself. And that's kind of interesting. And I thought it was important that we talk about him before I start getting into some of the other ones. Because I
Yeah.
also need to talk about the Eternal Warrior. I need to, well, if we're going to talk about Unity, I need to talk about, what's her name? Livewire. Uh, who else? I got to talk about Ninjak. I got to talk about these people. If we're going to talk about Unity and how that all happened, it's a very good story, by the way. And then, of course, you have other Archer and Armstrong and some of the other characters that are in Valiant that I'll probably be my last show. I do want it, last presentation, and just talk about those kind of stragglers that are quite popular.
Hmm.
But anyway, that's today's Valiant presentation. A little bit on what happened with the claim, and of course, Toyo Harada. You have any questions, Thunder?
I do not. Is he just they just call him Toyo Harada? He
Yep.
doesn't have like a
Nope.
bad guy name or anything?
Nope.
Interesting.
Yeah. A lot of that Valiant is not universal in that way. Like for instance, I just told you the hero of showed you the hero of Harbinger, Peter here, Stanchek, Peter here on the right. But I guess he has a code name that the Harbinger Foundation kind of gave him because all the patients they bring in the test they kind of give code names, I guess. And he's called Sting, I suppose. But he's Peter. Yeah,
Just Peter.
yeah. I don't. It's kind of like Exo Man of War. Sure, he's Exo Man of War. Sure, but no, he's Eric, and everyone calls him Eric. Yeah,
Hmm.
I don't know if they even hardly mention the Exo Man of War in the pages. Valiant's
Interesting.
different than that, right? If you're reading a Spider-Man comic book, most of the time he's being called Spider-Man, right?
Right.
And occasionally, when people who are very close to him will call him Peter, Mary J, mainly, right? But he's mostly Spider-Man. This is not true in Valiant. It's different. Yeah. It is more real. It's more realistic in many ways. Who is that guy who created Nolan? Christopher Nolan. He wanted to make everything realistic, right?
Yeah.
The way Valiant did it is what he should have done. There is some supernatural, there is paranormal going on, but you can pull it back, right?
Right.
And kind of like Fox tried to do with the X Men movies a little bit, but I don't know that they succeeded. But yeah, no, it is interesting because some of the most epic, scenes you're going to see as far as just mega power is coming out of Toyo himself. I mean, this is a cosmic threat. You need everyone on board to deal with that, right? It's not like Peter, who is, Peter's strong enough. I mean, for you and I, we're in trouble,
Right.
right? But he's not that level of thing. Yeah, which I
Hmm.
think is cool. I like it. But anyway, we will continue that next week where I'll get into the Valiant Entertainment era, which will be the last bit as far as the business storyline goes. And we'll talk about one or two of the other characters that we need to cover with Valiant. But beyond that, what do you think? Are you enjoying this little series?
It's interesting because I've never really read any of the Valiant stuff. I think I might have when I was real young, but it's very foggy if I did. Um, but yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think so.
Like I like this character here, this Toyo. He's interesting. I've always liked the idea of like your dark side or your I don't know. There's not really a analogous one for Marvel. Not really. I guess Thanos, but not really. Who's like this is your big bad, right? Or this is your main big bad
Hmm.
who someone has to deal with, or multiple someones are going to have to deal with at different points. I like that. I think it adds a little bit of structure, right, to these universes, into your storytelling. Like in DC, there's a lot of real powerful guys, but Darkseid at his most powerful is the god. He is the god of evil,
Sure, and
and
he's the most just evil because he is.
yeah, he's
Yeah,
just evil.
yeah,
Uh, there might be some, sense to his evil occasionally, like his plans or whatever, but by and large, it's just that
yeah.
he
He's
wants
just
power because
evil.
he wants power.
Yeah, yeah. But really good villains who last the test of time, and I think Darkseid is really only popular because he's the only thing that can deal with Superman. To be fair, but if you want a villain who actually can last, they need to have motivation. People who we would consider, you would consider evil, don't necessarily see themselves that way,
Mhm.
right? And Magneto, for instance, fuck humans, but he's all about protecting mutants. He doesn't care if the humans melt to nothingness. So therefore, he's a threat to humanity, but to mutant kind, he's not. Lex Luthor doesn't like aliens. I mean, he wants to protect humanity, etc., etc.
Right.
Harada is very much that way. He wants to bring peace to the world because of what he experienced. That's his overarching goal. But the problem is people are stupid, and you
Yes.
have to make people do things. And he has no qualms at all, no hesitation at all, to obtain as much power and influence he needs to make that happen, right? And I'm trying my best to explain all these Valiant things without really giving major spoilers. I've been really trying hard. It's difficult because I want you to read them. I really think they're worthy of your time, particularly with comic book stuff, because occasionally Marvel or DC will come up with a really good run of something where we have some good storytelling going on, but this is stuff that happened in the past. Modern Marvel doesn't really do that anymore, nor does I say DC. That metal that came out that everyone was all excited, DC metal, it was interesting, but in the end, it was like meh. The ending sucked balls. It wasn't
That's
good,
what I heard.
right?
That's what I heard.
Because they really don't have anything new to say, right? And something like Valiant, they had something new to say. They had a new story to tell. It was their own thing. Now, certainly,
Sure.
you hear me making say, "Well, this is like the X Men," or "He's like Magneto," or stuff like that. That's simply for an analogy to make it easy for you to vision it. It is very different, and in many ways, it's more simplistic because name a Marvel bad guy group. Name one.
Bad guy group.
Hmm.
The Brotherhood of Mutants.
Okay. How about another one?
Hmm. You stumped me off the top of my
Uh,
head.
the Hand, Aim,
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah. The
Hydra,
hand aim. Yeah, yeah. For some reason,
etc.
I'm stuck in X-Men mode. But
That's
yes, yes.
okay.
Hydra. Yeah, yeah,
Um,
you're right.
and on and on and on and on. Ultimately, Shield is kind of a bad guy group, really.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well, yeah.
yeah, in many ways. So it's so convoluted, it's so deep, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's disconnected often, and it's because the Spider-Man is Spider-Man. He's his own universe, right? But
Right,
then you want to cross him over. Well, Valiant was created from the crossover king to be eternally crossed over. So all of these characters are in each other's universe. Like I talk about Neil Gaiman's Sandman, that's getting a lot of conversation on the internet. He intentionally pulled that out of the DC universe for that Netflix run. Why do you think he
right.
did that? Right?
So it can just be its own thing.
Yeah, so it doesn't get convoluted, right? But Valiant is everything is connected in it. Yeah, Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. That's right, lady. But so it is a bit different in that way, and I like the flow. There aren't as many of these big bad guy groups. There's a small amount, and honestly, if you're going to keep a secret, such as the Psyot, you
Mm,
need to be pretty. It needs to be pretty small, right? You can't have 1,000 bad guy groups or other groups that know about it and are all interacting with it. You ain't going to keep that secret, right?
right.
Matter of fact, I think today is one of the bombing days. I have the alarms going off. I guess Hiroshima got wiped out today. Oh,
Oh,
they always set
no
off the
bueno.
they set out the sirens every year for the 2 days.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, I understand why.
Yeah, yeah.
Although I also, of course, around this time they always have many shows on the TV talking about we need to remove all nuclear weapons from the planet, and they have these little glad handing things in United Nation, and they have all this money they spend on these conferences and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And but it's all wasted. I mean, because
Right.
and they spend so much time and so much effort and so much emotion into it, and it's like these nuclear powered countries don't give a shit what you think. They really don't. And if you think that America or India or Russia or Pakistan or etc. are going to get rid of their nuclear weapons, you're out of your goddamn mind.
It's kind of like people who think we need to get rid of the guns in America. All right, you first, right? Like
Right.
it's just not gonna happen. It's they might talk about it. They're gonna try, sure, maybe, but
Yeah. I understand the
nobody's going to
sentiment,
willingly do
right?
it.
I understand
Yeah.
the sentiment, of course. But every year we always see that stuff on the TV, and they spend a lot of money on that, man. Every year, it's just, I mean, yeah, I know it's mean to say, but it's just wasted money, wasted
Hmm.
time, wasted effort. And of course, out of that comes a lot of these insane people who are all anti-nuclear power altogether. And it's like, out of one side of your face, you scream green power. And then at
Yeah.
the other side, you scream anti nuclear. Are you stupid?
Yes.
I mean,
I don't believe people. I don't believe anybody who says they're environmentalists and they're against nuclear power. I don't
It is
believe
the
you.
greenest thing you could possibly have.
Yes, yes, and not Hulk green either.
Well, it's literally near free power, dude. I mean,
Yes,
you have to, be safe about it, but our technology has improved greatly. Keep in mind, Fukushima was literally a 10-meter tsunami.
yeah,
Tsunami. Not a tidal wave, a tsunami, which went in how many kilometers inland did that go? Right?
exactly.
And of course, the Fukushima power plants were old. They were old style. And they were well kept by the Japanese, of course, but they were old style. The new type of technology we have is very robust. It's very nice. And
Hmm.
especially with India and China putting so much money and research into try to bring up thorium power plants, which I hope they'll be able to succeed with that because that would be a much safer type of nuclear energy anyway. The only reason
Yep.
why we use uranium is because various countries want to make nuclear weapons. Is really what it comes
Yes.
down to.
Well, the
But
craziest thing about one of the things that they complain about is what do we do with all the waste? And I think my boy Elon has solved that problem. If it really becomes an issue, we can just launch it into space
well,
cheaply.
we do have, of course, the Scandinavian countries make a lot of money off of that. To be fair, but
Yep.
we also have the Sapphire Project, which one of the things that they're doing in their little laboratory sun that they've created, one of the byproducts they found is the thing eats nuclear waste.
Yes.
That's nice.
That's helpful.
Yeah, useful. But anyway, let's go ahead and move on to some of our articles today. And yeah, we got some interesting things to talk about. Like I said, I have to run a little bit shorter today, but that's okay. Let me go ahead and switch this over for Thundero, and let's get into it. I have it set right there, and I didn't want that, but that's all right. All
Let's
righty.
see what we got.
Well, no, don't read that yet, because I'm going to switch over to the other thing I had. I
Oh,
want to start over here.
Olivia Newton-John dead at 73. That's rough.
It's a bit young. It's a bit young. It's not bad. It's kind of that age where you're like, well, okay, you know.
Yeah.
In these day and age, you would like to have seen her get into her 80s or 90s. But, I know for the younger viewers, you don't really know who she is very much. You probably saw her in Grease because everyone's seen Grease. She was a singer. She had a lot of albums. Matter of fact, I owned this album, and those posters may or may not have been on my wall. Yes. But she was a hottie, and I did own this album. But of course, she was also in movies. But mainly from my generation, she was a singer, right? Is what she was. And she had a lot of success. She was real popular there. Of course, Grease is a great fun movie. And it's one of those things. There's so many songs to sing along, right? So, condolences to her family and safe journeys for sure. It sounds like she had been having trouble with breast cancer off and on for 30 years, which
Oof.
is rough, which is rough. But seems she's from Britain, of course, originally, but she lived most of her life in California, it seems. But seems to be a pretty nice lady. I never heard anything bad said about her. So that's about all. I just wanted to mention it because that's Olivia Newton-John, dude.
Yeah. It's another one.
Yeah, well, people die. So,
What we do best.
although I did notice when I was, because it came on the Japanese news, so I saw it, and therefore I went prepared, and I do apologize. It's TMZ again. However, all the headlines I saw were Olivia Newton-John dead, dead. Everything, Fox, CNN, New York Post, whatever, all Olivia Newton-John dead, and it's like, didn't we used to use the word passed away? Didn't we used to soften that?
People don't want soft anymore.
It just
They
seems a
want
bit abrupt.
it's the problem is we become a clickbait society, and what gets more attention than dead? Maybe war, but death or dead or war. These are going to grab people's attention and get them to click.
I
So
guess. But you know what I mean, though. It's a bit
Yeah.
abrupt, dude. But that's right, Roger. Let's get physical, physical. Let's get physical, physical. Let me hear your body talk. What a great line. I like that line. It's a good line because I was all about hearing, listening to Olivia's body talk. She was in another movie, by the way, another music called Xanadu. No one talks about that one anymore.
Xanadu.
Xanadu. Xanadu. Yeah, I remember that one. But I'm older. Nevertheless, like I said, safe journeys. Unfortunate, a little bit too young. But anyway, let's get into it. Boom.
John Bernthal
Yeah.
back as the Punisher, says Rosario Dawson.
John Bernthal is a good Hollywood name, isn't it?
It is.
I think it works, and I like this guy. I've enjoyed him in the various things I've seen him do. Season one of Punisher was great. I really enjoyed it. The second season was not Punisher at all. It was like, what are you doing? Do you not know who this character is? But
Mm,
of course, Rosario Dawson is the one playing Ahsoka, and she played Night Nurse in the Netflix series. She showed up,
mhm.
right? But she didn't actually get to interact with John Bernthal as a Punisher, and she'd like to. Oh, that's nice.
Well,
However, will
I
she?
get to be the contrarian here
Yeah,
because I wasn't a big fan of those shows. And I don't I think he did fine with what he was given. I think he's a good actor. Actually, I
yeah.
like John a lot. I don't like him as Frank
Well,
aesthetically. He's just too
well,
small.
no, he is too small. You're right, but I think he pulls it off with his acting ability, though. You're right, he is too small. But it's okay. I'm if I'm willing to accept Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, I'm willing to accept John Bernthal as Punisher.
Yeah, but it's a different like metric, right? Like Hugh's too tall, but other than that, he was absolutely he became a monster for that role. Like he just
He
got
did.
insanely
He
jacked.
dedicated himself to us, and you have to love him for that.
Yeah.
But this story is talking more about what's going on with Disney. We know Daredevil is being brought over. We know that Kingpin is being brought over. It sounds like she might be being brought over as well. There were some comments that what's her name? What's the girl from the other series they had there? Damn it,
Um.
the lady.
Oh, come on, brain.
Yeah, I know my brain's not
Jessica
working today.
Jones.
Jessica Jones. They talk about it bringing possibly her over and that actress, which would be a mistake. I don't have a problem against that lady, but she was just not the right casting for that at all. But
Yeah.
they're talking about it, and of course they're also talking about bringing him over, or at least Rosario and others are, because we just had San Diego Comic Con, and there's been various conversations. However, and we do have the trailer for Daredevil Born Again, which was nice. But of course, he's showing up in She-Hulk as well.
Yeah.
But Bernthal has his own opinion. And last year he said, because he hasn't responded with this stuff's going on here. This is from last year. But he said that the Punisher in the MCU and seems to not be as interesting as he thinks a PG-13 Punisher wouldn't work. I agree. That character in particular has real, real, real deep, deep meaning for me and resonance in me. He's really in my heart, man. He's really in my bones. I'm enormously protective of that character. I've said before that there's nothing in this world more important to me than my wife and kids, and only until you understand that kind of love and what it really means to willingly die for someone, what it would be like if someone took them away from you. That's right. That's the heart of Punisher. That's why it was so stupid in season two. They try to give him a love interest, dumbasses.
Yeah. It's
That's a
stupid.
road. It's so dumb, and a darkness and a rage that really, really scares me and brings me to places that I've worked the last 20 years to get away from. So I was really grateful, respectful, and weary of the places where that role took me and the world in which I had to live. Yeah. But basically, he doesn't like the idea. If you're not going to bring Punisher, R-rated Punisher, fuck off, as far as he's concerned, basically.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, Mr. Bernthal. I do. Unlike you, I have no problem with him playing Punisher. I think he's fine. And like I said, the first season I enjoyed quite a bit. But the second season they just took a right, not even a right turn, a left turn, and they just it was complete lack of understanding of who the Punisher is. You don't heal the Punisher's soul with a new love interest. What are you doing? He's
There's
not
no
the
healing him.
Punisher anymore.
Right. Well, it's kind of like trying to fix Batman, right? Trying to fix his obsession. It's the same idea.
Yeah,
No,
no,
that's
no,
not the
go
point of
away.
the character.
Yeah,
Isn't
go
to be
away.
fixed.
Yeah,
Stop it.
no. He's a murder machine. He's a
Yes,
murder justice machine. That's what he is. He is the justice that Captain America and Batman don't have the balls to bring. That's
that's
what
right.
Punisher is, right? And I
Yeah.
understand some people don't like that. Cool, because at the same time, I like Batman. I love Captain America, but I also enjoy the Punisher.
Well, and he's not wrong, right? So look at the perfect example is that other related article over there. That's the perfect example is Thor. Thor is not supposed to be a joke. Now
Nope,
that's not to say there's not any comedy in the Thor comics. Of
he's
course there are,
jovial. Yeah,
but the character is not supposed to be a joke. In the MCU, he's nothing but a bunch of running gags. You cannot do that with Punisher. You just can't. If you do it, you might as well. There's no point even making that because that's just going to flop. The Punisher has to be taken seriously. He's not Daredevil. He's not Thor, at least MCU's version. He's not any of these characters. He's a different level of guy
yeah,
that it's actually kind of shocking he's even in Marvel, to be honest. He's just a different level of commitment to a cause.
mhm.
His only real principle is success, and that success means the death of those he deems problematic, right?
Evil.
Those
Yeah,
who are super criminals, evil.
yeah.
Um, that's all he cares about. That's all he focuses on. It's not some grand moral message. He doesn't have any creed. He's not out here trying to. I'm gonna stop crime. No, 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 no. He is pure vengeance.
Yeah,
That is what he is.
and he's accidentally killed innocents before, and he felt bad for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But then he's like, "Yeah, they
yeah,
shouldn't have been
yeah.
standing there."
Collateral damage. But it's Punisher is a Punisher. And to answer your
Yes.
question, Joshua, Joshua says I think I saw a tweet from her saying that she just heard it from a fan and it's not actually confirmed. No, there's nothing in this article confirming anything. She just would
Yeah.
like to work with him because he's the only
Yeah.
one she didn't get to work with and she likes him. And this article is looking at the fact that well they're starting to bring over many of those Netflix street level DC, defender groups. What about this one? Not only is it not confirmed, clearly Bernthal is not interested unless it's done the right way, and Marvel, therefore under their auspices of Disney, are not interested in this character either, dude.
No.
Especially with all defund the police and the whole police thing and the male violence that they perceive and on and on and on. I wouldn't imagine Marvel would touch this character with a 10-foot pole. Do you?
If it wasn't for the fact that the skull sells a lot of merch, it moves a lot of merch, I wouldn't be have been. It would not shock me if they had sold the Punisher off to get it out from underneath their brand,
Yep.
because he's not what they've turned Marvel into. He doesn't make any sense in that world. He just
Nope.
doesn't.
Slumber
It's also
parties
going to
and
be a
scones,
problem with
baby.
Wolverine.
Slumber
Wolverine's
parties.
going
Oh,
to be
he's
hard.
out. He's out.
Yeah,
Because unless he's a
I.
female getting proper justice as only females can, then that's
That's
not
right.
you can't have that. We know where they tried to kill them off for a couple of years, right? But the Wolverine's not going to last. But keep in mind, all those Marvel characters have either been made female or made gay. Who's
Yes.
left? Who's left? I mean, really. We got to get an article about DC here, and is who's doing the same thing. So, no, you're not going to see this. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's
No.
unfortunate. I would love to see if someone get a hold of this and do a proper Frank Castle. Really, really
Just like
let
I
it
don't
go.
see. Honestly, that first. Well, I guess it wasn't the first, but that Punisher movie with oh, what's his name? Thomas
Sure.
Jane.
Oh
I
yeah.
loved that movie. I thought it was great. It had
Yep.
the ending was kind of shitty, but the up to that was fantastic. Like
It wasn't
he
bad.
was he was Frank Castle. He looked the part. He had the right build. He looked like he just walked right off the comic book page.
Yeah,
I think that movie was really good. I mean, obviously, it could have been better. It wasn't a masterpiece or anything, but for a comic book movie, especially in that era, and especially a character like Punisher, I thought they did great. I
I
thought they
did,
did a great job.
and keep in mind in that movie, Jane accidentally, literally, actually stabbed Diesel with a knife, a
Yes.
real one, and he thought he was gonna die, and Diesel literally laughed it off because he's fucking Diesel, man. That's why.
Yeah, because he's a former bodybuilder. He said, "I've been stabbed before." That's what he told him.
Yeah, no big deal. Yeah,
Or
it's
I mean,
all right.
bodybuilder.
It's all right, dude. But the other guy who did the Punisher Warzone, I can't remember that actor's name offhand, but he did Frank. What's his name? But I like that
Oh,
movie too. That was fun. That was just pure Punisher fun. But
and that's the thing about Punisher. He's an easy movie to make because it's just
it is.
80s action schlock, right?
Yeah,
It's just a
yeah,
revenge story. The fact that Disney, we both know Disney will never make it, or if they do, it'll be nonsense. Uh, is why I kind of almost wish they would just like license it off and let somebody else make it because I think it could make a lot of money. I think the like the Joker, for instance, that movie, it's kind of just a revenge story too. Now it's more of a character piece and it's a little bit deeper psychologically, but
mm,
it's very violent when it wants to be. There's some brutality in it. I think you could do an R-rated. I mean, look at Daredevil. You can do an R-rated superhero-ish comic book movie, and
sure,
it's just fine nowadays. I think there's actually a market for
sure.
it that's kind of clamoring
Daredevil.
for it.
Not Daredevil.
Yeah,
Deadpool for sure. And
yeah,
season one
Deadpool.
of Punisher with Bernthal here was very bloody.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was nice. But you know what I would like to see? TM, don't you steal the internet. What I would love to see is a different perspective of a Punisher movie. I'd like to see this detective, and the detective gets a case, catches case, and is going out and is seeing the aftermath of Punisher, right?
yeah,
And trying to figure out what's going on, who is this, finding all these dead bodies, things blown up, just constantly doing it. And eventually, he does get ahead of him, and that's the first time you see Punisher coming in and just wiping out mob bosses or something. I
I
would
like it.
like to see Punisher as the shark, as it were. Um,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That would
I don't
be
know why
interesting.
we haven't done that with a superhero movie yet, at all. Like that whole formula, that whole Jawsian formula,
Yeah,
hasn't really been tried, and I think it's the perfect genre for it, especially a character
sure.
who's supposed to be an urban legend, who's supposed to be like this phantom that people are constantly looking over their shoulder for because they just don't know if he's going to be there or not. Punisher's perfect for that, so I think it would be great. I think you could do a Ghost Rider movie that way too.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Both would work fantastic
It
because
would.
they're both similar characters. They're vengeance. That's what they are.
Yeah, and you hire a really good actor to play the detective, right?
Yeah.
And you do not see Punisher until the very, very, very end.
Yes.
And maybe even something where he's blown away, the cop goes up and tries to say freeze, and then Punisher just throws something that hits him in the head, knocks him out, and as they're kind of their eyes they're going unconscious, he goes over and blows the head off of the last guy, and then that's the end of the movie. That would be
Yep.
freaking spectacular, dude.
He just stays a phantom. I like
Yep.
it.
Yeah, I like
I
it a
like it.
lot. Yeah. Anyway, let's
It's a
move on.
shame.
But I don't expect to see any Punisher anytime soon, dude. Do not expect
No,
it.
no, no,
Yeah,
no,
it's
no.
not happening.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. But let's move on to the next story.
Here's some good news. DC has a 10-year Marvel style plan, says David Zaslav. Now, normally you would hear this because we kind of heard this before, and you just kind of go, "Oh, okay," right? You just, yeah, okay, buddy. You just kind of roll your eyes at it. Except Mr. Zaslav, how do you say his name? Axlov, as I call him, has just been chopping down forest, just deforesting the hell out of this brand and this
Nearly
company.
$500 million he slashed,
Yes,
dude.
he's just slashing.
Yeah.
So he's me. I would say that means he means business,
Yeah.
um, which is good, and it does lean into the credit. It gives it a little bit more credibility, a little more clout that what he's saying is true. That he
Right.
does have a plan. That plan is a 10-year plan, and this is step one. He's tilling the ground so he can
Mhm.
plant his seeds.
That's right.
And I love it. You
Yeah,
love to see it. I've always said, always, that DC should be kicking Marvel's ass at this. They should be, but they haven't been.
because they
Maybe we can see this
rushed
happen.
to catch up
Yes.
instead of doing it
Yes.
right. But I agree 100%. I feel personally that Zaslav heard me calling to him and answered. And in the end, it's almost $900 million actually he's cut. It's
Oof.
actually closer to that. And of course, you're getting all kind of pushback and nonsense. And Kevin Smith said it's just not right that you got rid of the Latina Batgirl. I don't care if it was bad. Why does her being Latina? She looked like a black girl anyway. Why does that
Yeah.
matter? What does that have to do with anything, you dumbass?
Nothing.
But I do like what I'm hearing from Mr. Zaslav, and we are still being cautious, of course. But I'm liking what I'm seeing from the dude. Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav reveals their DC plans. He addressed the film universe during an investor Q&A. Those are always good bits of information on the company's Q2 call, which followed the recent cancellation of the Batgirl movie and others that was supposed to be released on HBO Max streaming service. Our ambition is to, this is not correct, bring Warner Brothers back and produce great high quality films. So he feels that Warner Brothers is not creating high quality films. It's interesting, isn't it?
He's correct.
He is correct,
Accurate.
but I mean he's clear that he doesn't see it that way. We can
Right.
build a long-term sustainable growth business out of DC. We're not going to release any film before it's ready. We're not going to release a film to make a quarter. We were talking about that yesterday.
Yeah.
We were talking about that just
Yep.
yesterday, and Ben had that concern, and I agreed with him. It is a concern, but his words say that he's not thinking that way. Hmm.
Good.
The focus is going to be on how do we make each of these films in general as good as possible. But DC is something that we think we can make better, and we're focused on it. He mentioned now this I think is a little bit of clickbaity here because you look at Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman. These are brands that are now everywhere in the world, are known everywhere in the world. And the ability to drive those all over the world with great stories is a big opportunity for us. You are correct, sir. We have done a reset. Wow. He used the R word.
Good.
He did, dude. I mean, that's big. That's a big deal right there, dude.
It
That
is.
is, they don't say those kind of corporate dudes don't say that word. They don't
Not
like it.
often.
Marvel and DC hate using those words, right? But interesting. We've restructured the business. Another R word. Damn, Zaslav, you're just all about the R today. The business, we've restructured it, reset it, and we're going to focus where there is going to be a team with a 10-year plan, a la Marvel, right? And he even, oh, here it is, Alan Horn. There it is. I was trying to think of
That's
that name.
him.
It's very similar to the structure that Alan Horn and Bob Iger put together very effectively with Kevin Feige at Disney. Yep. Well, and it's not a bad thing to follow, especially when you had Horn playing Intercept versus Kevin Feige's insanity. We think that we could build a long-term, much stronger, sustainable growth business out of DC, and as part of that, we're going to focus on quality. Yep, very good. Now he did mention the Flash thing here. We've seen the Flash, Black Adam, and Shazam 2. He said we are very excited about them. We've seen them. We think they are terrific, and we think we can make them even better. So, what does that mean? We can make them even better. You've already seen them, but you can make them better. Well, that
Mhm.
suggests research, doesn't it?
Well, you'd have to get on it with Black Adam because that's coming out like next month or the
Yeah,
month
but maybe
after.
that's not a problem. Maybe Shazam isn't a problem. Maybe
Right.
it's the Flash that's a problem,
Well, they've
right?
probably already done the reshoots. I mean, they've been working on that Black Adam movie for a decade. Shazam 2's been in production pretty much since Shazam 1 dropped. So, yeah, I would say I think he also means going forward as well. The
Yeah.
plan is to make them better, which all points to me that Ezra Miller, regardless of, let's say he somehow gets off, he probably will with all this stuff
Well, he's out of Warner
because
Brothers for sure, though.
yeah, they're going to cut ties with him as soon as possible. So I wouldn't be surprised if in this Flash movie we know it's going to be this like multiversal time, maybe even time travel thing. From what we've seen of it, I wouldn't be surprised if they have already filmed or are going to film who they'll just leave him in this movie, and then at the end have somebody else replace him as Barry Allen
Yeah, just
and
bite the
just
bullet
say,
and drop it on
yeah,
HBO Max or something. Yeah.
yeah,
Because what I understand from all the stuff, because this has been in the can for a long time, for all the information we got from the Flash movie, it's a pretty good flick.
yeah.
We haven't heard much bang about it, so I mean that's not the problem. And I understand, chat. Thunder and I are certainly still being cautious about Mr. Zaslav. We are,
Yes,
but I think you and I both agree we like what we're hearing, though, right?
yes.
If this turns out to be true, that's awesome. And they give us a little bit of data here, and it's just kind of supposition, really. But oh, look, they still have these icons up, and they have these things up, and it's like, ooh, that tells us something. Well, does it? Does it really? Because we see things up
Hmm.
here that are not being made anymore. Game of Thrones is done, right? Friends was done decades ago. So I mean,
Yeah.
I think they're reading into this a little bit, but there's certainly franchises, yeah. But anyway, um, interesting, and of course, I think all of us were sitting here saying, well, Marvel is clearly has a plan with this Thanos thing. They clearly have a plan. Laid that plan out over 10 years, 11 years, right? And why is DC not doing the same? We kept asking that question. I know I did. What is DC doing? What are you doing? Why aren't you doing something similar? Right? But they didn't,
Right.
and it's a debacle, dude. They screwed that up bad, really bad. I know a lot of people don't like Man of Steel, but other than the dumb things that Kal-El would never do, overall, I thought it was a fun movie. But it didn't get better.
Well, it
W-
was just as we've said, it was just a fundamental misunderstanding
Yeah,
of why
fundamental.
Superman works.
Yeah, it was.
Even his family unit,
Yeah,
why it works, all
yeah,
of them, the
yeah.
Jor-El, all of them.
That's what you get when you put a goddamn German in charge, dude. That's
Yeah,
what I
you
told you.
can't put Schneider in charge of
No,
things.
no
He can make
Germans.
pretty pictures.
No,
Schneider
no.
can make pretty
They're
pictures,
a
but that's it.
dour people.
That's true.
Okay.
But I did notice that one thing he did say, which I is very interesting to me, because we've been talking about HBO Max, right? Um, their focus, however, seems to be on theatrical releases.
His is, yeah. He really
Yeah,
thinks it's important to keep doing that. And fair enough. I agree with him. Yeah.
I do too. Especially considering I do think that eventually streaming is going to completely supplant the theater, and the theater will be much more of a niche thing that people kind of like drive-ins are now, right? They're still around, but they're very rare, right? They're few and far between.
Hmm.
Uh, that's kind of what's just going to happen eventually. I think COVID show has proven, however, that the world's not ready for that, and their profit margins went in the toilet during COVID, during the
Yeah.
lockdowns and things.
Yeah.
So you're going to see a big push now from especially the old hat like Warner, who are going to try and build the audience back into going to the theater. And I think Top Gun Maverick was the first movie that and Spider Man. Those were the first two movies to really prove that this can still make a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
But you have to know what you're doing. You have to have all your ducks in a row. And both of those movies largely did have all their ducks in a row.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we're seeing here is him largely. He's getting his ducks in a row. He's laying out his plan. He's laying out his ladder where he wants to go. I would assume he already knows, even probably story beats. If he says he's got a 10-year plan, he'd have to,
Yeah.
of where he wants these movies to go, how they're going to tie them in together. Because this is all stuff that Feige did. Credit to Feige. They did this. They sat down and they spent probably a couple years at least laying out a roadmap overall of how they're going to get from point A to point B, what
Yep.
characters they're going to introduce when. And it was obviously not, they didn't stick to it
There's
perfectly, of
some
course,
detours, I'm sure. Yeah, but that happens.
but
Life
largely they
happens.
got to where they were going. And
Yeah.
where they were going was Infinity Saga, and that's where they got.
Yeah.
If they have this same level of planning, which it sounds like they do, that's only a good thing for anybody who's a DC fan, because as much as I love Marvel, as I've gotten older, I've become more of a DC fan.
Well, of course, because they're more
Largely,
adult. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that, and they're just Marvel's very down to earth in a lot of ways, and DC's much more aspirational. It's almost theological in a lot,
It is
and
very
I
much
like,
so,
I
yeah. Yeah.
appreciate that.
But it has always been a little more adult though. It always has been.
Yes,
And you know, I it's good. I hope they do this. I hope they stick to it and they put a good plan together. And one of the things that I think he seems to understand is, you know, tell good stories, but people are sick and tired of this identity politic. They really are. The general public is just
yes,
sick of it. I'll give you a good example: the Prey movie, right? The new Predator movie. Of course, it's not a Predator movie; it's a Prey movie, right? It's different. And from what I understand, movie-wise, it's a pretty solid movie, actually.
yes,
But it's absolutely rampant with woke identity politics. I'm a woman. Hear me raw. I want to be a hunter because I can, right? Not just simply because, hey, if we have a bad winter, half these people are going to die. You know that, right?
yeah,
Yeah, no, 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 fuck that. My priorities, me. I'm what's important, me. And so, they have to get away from that. And hopefully, Zaslav understands that. Just tell good stories. If you want to have more of the female characters from DC, then do that. Tell their stories. But you don't take the Wonder Woman movie, and the first one was fine. I mean, people are like, oh, it was so great. No, it wasn't. It just, the other movies around it sucked. That's why it looked better. It was okay movie, right? And then the second movie sucked ball. Why? It sucked balls because they decided to get woke with it. Why? Why can't she just be Wonder Woman, a badass goddess from
yeah.
Themyscira, right? And I hope he understands that because you can feel the absolute pulsing of culture right now. You can feel it. This next one, I don't know how much we want to talk about this because I'm like, what?
Oh no, Marvel's Eternals 2 already announced, according to Patton Oswalt. Now, Patton Oswalt is probably, allegedly, a murderer. Just take that with a grain of salt. Anything he says. Let's go.
Fair enough. But this is hard to believe because yes, we know there's woke stuff in it. Fair enough, but that's not why this movie failed. This movie failed because it was a really really bad movie. I couldn't even get through a half hour of it, dude. It's so bad. The acting is so bad. The script is so bad. It's so bad. There's no way they're going to make a second Eternals. They can't. How could they possibly do that? It was such an utter failure, dude. Like a lot of people complained about Shang-Chi, right?
Right.
But mainly the complaint was because Simu Liu is a moron, an absolute moron, and Aquafina as well. They're just idiot kids that don't know how to shut their damn mouth because that movie is fine. It's whatever. It's like a five. What? It's a normal popcorn flick. It's nothing wrong with it. But their mouth is what got all the controversy. And that Simu Liu guy, he still won't shut up.
Of
He's
course not.
such a fool. But this was just a bad, bad movie. It's a completely different conversation, right?
And the funny thing is, everybody knew it was going to be. Like, there was no one that I know of who was like, "Oh, they might pull this off." No,
No.
no, no. We all knew it was coming. It was going to be trash. It was going to be a dumpster fire, and that's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
If they really are making a second one, they might as well. Feige might as well walk up to David, to the axe himself, and just hand him the keys to the castle, because he's done lost his damn mind. Because it seems like, from all accounts, Zaslav is coming
Yeah, but this is a
for the
different. That's
mouse.
DC. This is Marvel. We're talking about Marvel.
I know. No, listen to me. Zaslav is coming for the mouse.
You
That's
think?
what he's after. Absolutely. They want to knock them off the pedestal, and supplant them, and
Oh, I
become
see. In
the
that way. Okay.
the
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. No, of
So
course
he
they. Of
might as
course
well
he
just
does.
walk on over to him and just be like, "Here, you win." If they're gonna make a second one of these, this is just, he's tapping out. Basically,
Yeah.
he's in a hold, he's in the arm bar, and he's tapping. He's out.
Well, and of
He's done.
course Zaslav should have that attitude. Yeah, he's the CEO
Yes.
of Warner Brothers. He better have that attitude. But yeah, I see your point. But this would be insanity. It
Yeah,
just,
just don't.
yeah,
Just
don't do that. Yeah,
do the other thing. Do the other
yeah,
thing.
whatever it is. However, I did have a couple other things I wanted to cover, but I don't. My time is very short. So let me cover this real quick, and I'll end it with that. And I won't bother with the Boom Studios. But I just want to cover this real quick.
Mary Marvel just got a huge power upgrade.
Now, you know how I mentioned earlier that everything has either been replaced by females or homosexuals in general, right? Everything's kind of being
Yeah,
replaced. This is DC Comics we're talking about, of course, with Mary Marvel, Captain Marvel, Shazam, the whole stuff like that. And I'm a bit surprised because coming out in December, we have Shazam 2, right? And Mary
yeah.
is in that, although I think she's been race swapped in that, hasn't she? I'm not sure. Maybe she wasn't. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anyway. However, in the comic book, and it's a bit strange because, like I said, we're not that far away from the Shazam movie coming out. Billy is trapped in the Rock of Eternity. Okay. And they need a new champion of Shazam. And of course, Mary is chosen. Now, this is problematic or for many reasons. I'll use their word. One, not only is she getting the power of Shazam, she's getting all of it for some reason now, and whatever that means. And she's way better, powerful, more better than Billy ever was,
Of course.
of
Yeah.
course,
As she
as you do. But the other problematic point is, and I pretty sure I did a complete presentation on Mary Marvel not that long ago. What was the thing that I liked about it? She's a villain.
yeah.
She's a bad guy. And I like the twist they did with her. And I like that they stuck the landing on it. I like what they did with Mary. She's has a character arc, dude. It's just a villainous one, right? And I have no problem with it. I love what they did with Mary, to be honest with you. But now all of a sudden she is the new Shazam and she's all that. She is and the shizzle. Yeah, I haven't heard that
And the
since the
shizzle.
90s. But
She this man, I really hate what they've done with Captain Marvel.
yeah.
Um, I hate the fact that they call it Shazam. I hate the fact that they call it right in that title. They call it the Champion of Shazam, and for some reason, just refuse to call him champion. And
Mhm.
this right here is just even. I've never really liked the Marvel family. I understand that it goes all the way back, fine, but I just don't like it. I don't like it conceptually. Basically, they just they become like Power Rangers, and I just
Well, it was
no,
all
it
marketing
doesn't.
back in the day, but like I said,
Yeah,
Mary particularly, you didn't hear me mention any of the other ones. I just mentioned Mary, and I
yeah,
like the fact that they twisted it and made her a villain. I thought it was pretty cool. It doesn't make sense that she's Shazam. She's a bad guy. She's a
yeah.
person who's all about her own personal power, her own needs. She's selfish. And that's a interesting twist for the characters. It's very interesting, but nope. She's the shizzle now. But like I said, the thing with it is, don't we have this movie coming out here like in December? What is it? December 4th? It's coming really
Coming
soon, right?
soon.
I think they mentioned
Yeah.
it in here somewhere, but whatever. It's coming in December. So why is the comic book doing this? It's the same kind of nonsense for the time when the Marvel movies were coming out, and little kids would go to the comic book store and say, "I want a Captain America comic book." Well, we don't. There is no Steve Rogers anymore, right? And they couldn't actually find any of the new comic books that were anything similar to what was going on in the movies. They had to go into the old rack. And is DC doing the same thing? Wouldn't you think you would have to want to have something parallel going on so that maybe the movie will promote some comic book sales? You know, just
Think.
marketing thinking here, just off the top of my head. No,
Dumb.
dumb. And a rabbit tells her too. He's a magical rabbit that comes
Magic
up and
Rabbit.
says, "You need to." She said, "I don't want to be. I want to be a normal girl." You have to be. Fine. I will be the most powerful thing in the universe. That's how it reads out, by the way. I'm not even joking. But
It's frustrating, man, because they just keep doing this. It has yet to work. Name me a time when they did this where it worked.
it doesn't. Yeah, and she's such a good villain
Ever.
too. Why would you stop doing that with her? She's a good villain, man. I mean, she sides with Darkseid. She literally, yes, Bendis, you're right, Adrian. She's literally like the confidant and lover of Darkseid. That's what she is now, and I love that. I think that's cool. I like what they've done with Mary, but no, now they've completely reversed, and I don't get it. I don't get it. Let
Dumb.
the villains be villains, man. What are you doing?
And the other thing is they literally just shuffle Billy off. They lock him in the stone, which, what? How'd that happen?
Yeah, whatever.
Um,
Comic book.
and it's just, it's a waste.
Yeah.
It's a waste because if you wanted to have a new champion, okay, fine. That's fine. There's no problem with that necessarily. I don't know why you're getting rid of Billy, but fine. Say you want it to be a girl, fine. Why would you use this one? Why would you
Yeah.
use particularly Mary? It doesn't make sense.
Because and especially going is the fact that she's been powered differently now. She had gotten her powers in a different way now because of the path she took.
Right.
So, it's and like I said, I really like the character arc that they had for Mary Marvel. I like it. But it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I'm sure Billy will be back at some time. It's comic books, of course he will be. But it just I thought it was odd timing as well, because you do have a movie coming out in a few months. Um, Odd, but
Very.
it's the same. It's this tramp to everything's got to be female or some kind of POC or some kind of homosexual of some kind. They're just desperate, and everyone seems to be on board with it. And it's like we're not, because your comic book, your sales are on the ground, dude. You're literally on the ground. But whatever. There you go. Go read the new champion of Shazam, and I agree. They should just stop that nonsense. They even know what they should be calling him. Right there. Look
Yeah,
at it.
it's right there. It's
It's
looking right
right
at you.
there, dude.
Ah,
But whatever. It's a shame because I like Mary Marvel. Like I said, I did a whole presentation on her for a reason, didn't I?
yeah.
Right.
No,
So
she's actually a decent character.
it's a
I've
cool
looked into
character.
her a little bit. She's not bad at all. It's just they can't get out of their own way. They have to push the agenda, and it's dumb. It's just dumb. Like
Mm.
there's no upside here. This isn't going to work. It never works. It never works. So
Mis-
why do it?
Mr. Zaslav, I know you're busy, sir, but it would be nice if you get around to the fucking comic book, sir.
Yeah, yeah.
Please,
I understand
please.
it's way down on your list of priorities
Yeah,
because it don't make you any money. I
I
get
know.
that,
Yeah,
but maybe it could if somebody just gave a shit, just a
little,
little bit of one,
little bit of the
just a
axe,
bit.
sir. A little bit of the axe.
Yeah,
You know, it would be
give it.
smart for Zaslav to do, to actually put a little bit of focus in that because it could be a moneymaker. And you know, it would be really smart for Warner Brothers Discovery to do buy some manga rights.
Yeah, I love it. I love everything you're saying to me right now,
Yeah,
especially like ones that aren't in necessarily in run anymore, and just print them under their label. Buy
yeah.
up the rights, put it under their label, get the attention on their brand,
Hmm.
and then use that to start selling American books, American
Yep.
style
Yep.
books.
It's just a suggestion, Mr. Zaslav. But nevertheless, let me move on to my last bit here. And I was going to take a look at Boom Studios and just kind of see what they have going on for comics and stuff. And I thought it was really interesting because with Boom, I've read a lot of good Boom books that I do enjoy. But I clicked on you. Be clicked. Okay, thank you. But another thing that's interesting, if you go through the comics, and they're busy. They got a lot of stuff going on. Uh, there is a lot of identity politics in here as well, though. A lot.
Yep.
But it's also mixed in with stuff like Big Trouble in Little China, which isn't right, or Ben 10, or a lot of IP stuff. But Berserk, of course, with Keanu Reeves. But it's a weird eclectic collection for sure. Because you also got what the Lumberjanes in here, right? And Fence, which is a homosexual comic book, straight up. just about pretty boys having gay sex. That's the whole comic book. That's the whole thing, right? So it's a weird, very eclectic group. But then again, they are trying to cater to everyone. So good on them. But last thing I want to do when I end up today is I want to talk about a comic book series that had blown up and become something more that you may or may not have heard of. Taiwan situation, China's just rattling their sabers. Roger, nothing's going to come of it. Anyway, Mouse Guard. Now, Mr. Peterson here, David Peterson, is the creator of Mouse Guard. And have you ever read Mouse Guard comic book?
I have not.
Okay. Or graphic novel, I guess you'd call it. Now, you can see from here, just looking at the series one, two, three, etc., etc. Um, the art is very interesting, right? It's quite beautiful. It's very interesting, and as you see, fall, winter, the Black Axe, there are all these different kind of names. They have a real nice feel in the color palettes as they move through their stories, and it's basically about a bunch of mice and their world. It's as if they're humans; they're just anthropomorphic mice, and set in the Middle Ages or Renaissance or a Middle Ages, I guess, type of era, and their lives and the drama and the intrigue and the things that go on. It's just simply humans have been replaced with mice. That's it. It's not some. It's not like something with a secret in them. Spoilers, or something like that. It's just simply an analog for humans using mice. However, the art is fantastic, which I don't have to tell you. Look at it. It's been
Yep,
going on
it's good.
quite a while. It is great, but it's gone beyond just the comic books which you see all here. They also have a role playing game, which I own, which is very good. They came out with a box set for that as well. And they have another game here, Swords and Strongholds game. And I wanted to mention it because it doesn't get a lot. It's won a bunch of awards, and rightly so. We've seen a lot of people get Eisner and Harvey awards who don't deserve it. It's pure politics, right? This deserves every accolade it gets. But a lot of people don't know Mouse Guard, and it's shocking to me because you should be reading Mouse Guard. If you like graphic novels, comic books, this is definitely something that should be on your list. It's so well written. The action comes off so well. Like this little thing you see on the side with a fight with a snake. It's such a good moment in the story, actually. And I just wanted to present it to you guys, and hopefully, maybe you'll go out and check it out. Now, this new game here is a new thing to me. I don't know why are you not clicking when I click. I clicked on you.
Uh-oh.
Maybe because I'm
Just
on.
needs a new mouse.
No, I don't know what it is here. Oh, there we go. It's being so. Why are you being slow? Should be lightning fast. I don't know what this board game is. Let me check it out. Oh, this thing. Yeah, no, I remember seeing it. I know I remember seeing this. I didn't buy that set that had it in it. It's like a kind of a old, chess-esque type of game. Yeah, I remember this. Yeah, okay, okay. But anyway, that's not the point. Here you have one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine series that you can read. There are a lot of stuff. Of course, I haven't read all of them. I think I've only read the first. Oh no, Baldwin the Brave. So I've read the first five. Okay. Uh, it is being slow, dude. That should instantly be taking me somewhere. What are you doing? But they put the volumes out in hardcover. They are absolutely gorgeous. And there's lots of art and lots of story. It's a really really good spending of your money, I would say. Has anyone in the chat know anything or read anything about Mouse Guard? Yeah, the art is gorgeous, Adrian. Yeah.
Like Adrian's wanted to play it for a while. The game, you
The
know.
RPG. Yeah, no, I own that. Um, uh, that was actually one of the few things that I actually printed the entire thing out and bound it myself. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. Adrian's only read three. Yeah, I haven't read them all. I got to catch up. I've only read up to. I know Bald and the Brave, so that's the I've read five. I haven't read the Legends of the Guard yet, but the art of the Mouse Guard, I think, is literally just art. So maybe it's one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. There's eight actual series, and like I said, each one of these volumes are put into these beautiful hardcover books. They're literally coffee table books in and of themselves. Just someone picking up and looking at the beautiful art it's enough. But the storytelling's really well done. Mr. Peterson is a really good writer, and Mouse Guard is worthy of your time.
See, it's people like that. So we were talking about how they should buy up some manga.
Yeah,
Um, the problem with doing that is unless they do what I said and buy some of the older stuff, older runs, the rights to them or whatever, is these artists, a lot of them over here don't have the discipline, I guess would be the right word, to be both author and artist, like a lot of mangakas are, right? They
that's
draw
true.
it and they write the story. Obviously, they have other people come in and do some editing and things, but
Yeah, but
largely
Japan
they do a lot of
is
the work.
here in Japan. Discipline and effectiveness are still taught and instilled and demanded.
Yeah.
It's
Well, that's
different.
my point though, is if they did that, is unless they went with just old stuff or out of print stuff or whatever, it would be hard to find somebody who could match that level unless I guess they could just bring people from Japan over and have them do
Sure,
it.
you could. And we do have some great artists that would love the opportunity, I'm sure. But
Yes.
there is a work ethic issue. But keep in mind, Japan's a place that actually the government had to intervene because people were dying from overworking, literally dying from working too much, and the government had to come in and try to tone that down a bit. Name one American who died because they worked too hard. John Henry.
That's about it.
Well, that's the only one that comes to my mind. But Japan is just a different animal in that regard anyway. But nevertheless, check out Moss Guard. It is really, really good. It is very much like the old school children's illustration, but it is not a children's book, though, Adrian, and you know that. There's some pretty serious shit goes down in these books, dude. Now it's not vulgar. It's definitely more the old style storytelling like they used to have before Disney and those kind of people got involved and softened everything. So it's not a graphic or vulgar for sure, but it's definitely more seriously themed. I mean, people die or mice die, and snakes and various other things too. It's just handled so well. Mr. Peterson is a great creative. He just needs more love, Thundero. He needs more love.
Sounds like it.
Yeah,
See, that's something that I find interesting. So we have in the zeitgeist nowadays where you can't have races be considered evil or wicked or da 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 da. Right? That's this new nonsense they're doing. What about snakes? Can we have evil snakes? Because snakes are pretty fucking evil as a species, apparently.
well,
Um,
they're
they're a
emotionless.
predator.
Yeah,
Yeah, yes, and in that emotionlessness, they're brutal. Um, when they want to be, they're a
sure.
predator, and things like this. Into humans, that we have a deep ingrained, most of us do anyway, deep ingrained fear of snakes.
Hmm.
For various reasons, probably because they terrorized us when we were a young species. Uh, but I just think it's interesting because doing something like this kind of takes that whole argument away,
Hmm.
right? You're using mice and snakes and weasels, apparently.
Sure.
Um,
But God
I
said,
like that.
"He shall strike your heel, and you shall strike his head." That's why.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah.
But it is interesting what we fear. Yeah, weasels and other things like that, rats. But it's just representing the threat, the danger, because these things,
Yes.
of course, want to kill them, and they have to survive. And the mouse guard and of course the Black X series is really good. But their job is to protect mousedom, right? That's their
It's
job.
like it.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. I think we don't modern art a lot of times, and especially modern cinema, doesn't play with the subconscious fears that are instinctual that a lot of humans have, like snakes. Like old art, and this isn't that old, but older art did that a lot. You'd see a lot of depiction of snakes
Sure.
or other predators that were, a terror to have always been a terror to us. But snakes, especially, have always been in our cultural zeitgeist all over the world
Sure.
as a being of power and terror. So it's I don't know, that art there just kind of caught my attention. I like the fact that, and it makes sense too, right? Mice, natural enemy would be a snake.
Hmm.
Makes sense.
Yep. And every panel catches your attention like that. That's why I appreciate it. It is one of the most phenomenal standalone things ever, in my opinion. It's Mr. Peterson is he's very impressive. And his artistic abilities, but his writing abilities too. And you make the mention that here in Japan, most of the manga are, of course, created by an individual, right?
Yeah,
It isn't until they find fame and that gets thrown over into the anime department, as it were, then you have armies drop on it. You know, these
that's right.
animation studios and their armies of very low paid, way overworked kids. They get those animes put out. But the manga itself is usually a single person. Yeah, it's true. And it's quite impressive the amount of material that an individual can create, right? We talk about in awe of Jack Kirby doing 8 pages a day, 8 pages a day. Where I'm
Yeah.
guarantee you a lot of these manga guys are doing 4 to 6 pages a day normally. It's
I know for a
normal.
fact the guy who does the One Punch Man manga, Murata, who is probably the best artist in that field right now. He's unbelievable. Um, in 1 week's time, last month, he got 26 pages done because they do 70 a chapter, right?
Yeah,
Something like that.
yeah,
He got 26 pages done in a week.
yeah.
That's crazy
It's only
fast.
4 pages
But
a day.
yeah,
Yeah. So
yep,
I mean, but I'm just saying, for over here, doing four or 5 pages a day is not, that extreme. Now, of course, they don't have to go through the extra processes we have, where, of course, we usually separate the penciling, the inking, and then, of course, you have coloring and lettering and all that stuff, where they do
right.
it all in one go, right? So it is a little more simplistic than what Americans do, but still, we've seen many artists over here who are really good. They struggle with a page a day. They struggle with a page a day, dude. They do.
Yeah,
Look at Ethan. Ethan is always been a complaint from DC Comics and others of his slowness, right? And
right.
we know he's fantastic, right? His art is really impressive, and we've seen him work as well, or at least I have. And but that dude has a hard time getting a page a day. He does, right? And even someone who's considered fast by American standards, Mike S. Miller, he'll do two, maybe three, and
Right.
he's considered fast. But a manga guy is putting out 4 a day, I guarantee you, very standardly.
And this guy, this Murata, the art he's doing isn't like quick art, right? These are like super
No,
detailed.
his backgrounds, yeah, yeah,
It's nuts, man. I don't know how one man does that. I genuinely don't. The level that he's at is ridiculous.
right. And they're
But some
all
of these guys are just like that. They can just pump out this. It's like a lot of people have this idea because they see things like One Piece or they see the more cartoony style mangas that's what they all are. No,
no,
no, no. I
and
like Oda.
uh,
Oda's fine, but he is not that great of an artist. There are some
that's a
mangakas out
different
there who
level,
are
yeah.
just
But even One Piece manga is way better than the anime though, right?
yes,
But you also get the other side of it. You get like Mob Psycho 100, and it's the writing is really good. But people, the kind of running joke is how bad the art is, right?
right.
And even in the anime, because it became so popular, they made an anime. Um, the main character and a couple other characters, they keep him with the bad art as a nod to the artist, right?
Yeah,
But then again, Mob Psycho 100 has scenes in it, some of the best animation I've ever seen, though. Just out of
it
this
is.
world what they did with that. But anyway. Thank you all very much. Tomorrow, because I definitely got to go. I have repairmen going to be here very shortly, and I don't want to have to give them the mic and let them talk to you because you won't understand a goddamn word, right?
I
So I
bet you I will figure it out. I was a repairman for a long time.
right. But I need to prepare a little bit for that anyway. But nevertheless, Tomorrow we are running, of course, our campaign in D&D, not D&D, Cypher System. Come back for that, and of course, next week we'll be doing Night Owls and Comics News Today as well. So thank you very much, and Thundero, take us out of here, man.
This one is not by me. Most of these ones I do are by me, but this one is by John Wanamaker. And he says people who cannot find time for recreation are obliged, sooner or later, to find time for illness.
Mm, namaste.
Yes.
Later.